February being short sure doesn't make this feel less late than usual. Welcome folks, we're doing another tier list, this time for set 15, and this set has felt interesting in one particular way, and that is that in Shadowverse, which is another card game that I play, a digital card game that I play, the meta evolves almost every week, and the reason why is because you have like one popular deck that like dominates everything, and then people go like, okay, this deck is dominating everything, we need to adapt to it, we need to like beat it. So for example, if it's an aggro deck, people start playing a lot of like healing cards in every single deck, and then when people start playing healing cards, we're like, aha, everyone's starting to play slower now, so now I can play something that is more mid-range or control that would have died against that aggro. And so the meta changes every week as people keep trying to counter whatever is the trend of the week. This set, for like the first time, has kind of felt like that. It's kind of felt like a meta where every week it changed. Like week 1, it felt like Jewel Knights were literally everywhere. Ashley Reverse, every single matchup, like non-stop, just non-stop every single day. And then it kind of started shifting to like older decks from past sets. Then people figured out Ashura started popping off everywhere. Then people realized, oh, Reiji beats Ashura, so then Reiji was everywhere, and then people started playing decks that beat Reiji, if you know those exist. And then now we have nerfs, so people are just playing whatever they want because they're like, well, there's gonna be a big nerf, we don't know what the meta is gonna be, so it's gonna be just crazy. So this time it's gonna be pretty interesting because I will be making this pre-nerf, because I don't know if Global will get set 15 post-nerf or pre-nerf. I will do this pre-nerf, and then at the end we're gonna adjust it for in case of post-nerf, but keep in mind we don't actually have the nerfs yet in the Japanese server, and so when you're seeing this, the placement of the post-nerf will be all speculation. It will be completely based on speculation, and so don't take it to heart in case it's different in Global if you get these cards post-nerf. But anyway, let's actually take a look at things and look at these tier lists. But first, take a look at some other websites. So this one is called Game With. You can see here at the top, people keep asking every single time. I usually put it in the description, but I forget sometimes. But the meta that they basically put is, let's see, the events. This is from Morkumo, looks pretty mid-range, nothing too strong. Tier 1, they say, from the new decks is Zenith, Ashley Reverse, and then the 2 Ashura variants. I 100% agree. From this new set, I think these 2 are, or these 4 rather, are indeed the best ones. Zenith, I'll talk about them when I get into my own. Then Dauntless Reverse and Minerva as tier 2. I also agree. I think Grandazel Scissors is higher. I think it's at least tier 2. It's definitely very popular, and it can definitely do some pretty nasty shit. Tempest Bolt, I think this one is really okay. Sanctuary of Light, they still don't believe. I think this deck, I've been playing this deck myself, it's actually pretty good. I'm surprised, it's actually pretty good. So that's the impression from Game With. Looking at Game Box now, let's take a look. These are the rank fight decks, so Ashura, of course, Chaos, still tier 1. I mean, we should probably take a look at what they say for the other decks. So their other tier 1, they say Revenger is still at the top, Reiji is still at the top, and then Nouvelle is still at the top, Chaos at the top, the Yusha. This is an interesting one here. And then regular Blouse and stuff like that. Schwarzschild tier 3, the end, the end without Dauntless tier 3, stuff like that. So pretty, or the end without Nouvelle rather, I guess, is tier 3. So pretty interesting. So coming back to this one, let's see what other new decks they put in here. So tier 2, they put Jewel Knights, Liberators, Minerva, Dauntless, and this is Dauntless the End. Anything else that's new in here? Not too much, I guess. And this is the tournament deck, so Ashura Samurai still up here, Reiji of course up here, Seal Dragons keep staying up here, pretty interesting. So yeah, those are the 2 websites. This is Game Box, so we just saw Game With earlier, this is Game Box. You can also check them out here. So there you go. And now let's take a look at my own. So as always, I'm using the new sort of criteria because I think that they are much cleaner, much nicer to look at, and overall just make the whole thing a lot easier to discuss with not having to put things as like tier 1, 2, 3, but rather what are the best, what are like competitive decks, what stuff do you need to put in a lot of effort to be kind of like worth it, but still not as good as the best decks, and then what is really struggling, and then what are like fun meme decks. So let's just go through it. Damn, I arranged everything by nations before pressing record, and now it actually reset everything. That's nasty, man. I actually went through the effort of putting everything into nations and it just reset it. Damn, I'm not going through this again. All right, let's just go through this then. I think Battle Sisters is in Struggle Street. We talk about this every single time. I think I gotta start chopping off decks. There's like 5 or 4 Aquaforce decks in here. I gotta start reworking this list, I think, for next time. Reiji, definitely best before nerf, 100%. This one is just ridiculously good. The only deck that without Limit Break can deny other people's Limit Break and just shuts down most decks in here, and therefore it's just really, really good. I think Grand Blue is also kind of struggling right now. It really did not get the kind of support it needed. Dauntless, this is, so basically you're going to see 2 The End variants. I'm just going to put both of them up in here. Mr. The End is over here. So these are both best. The difference between these is this is Nouvelle without the end, this is the end with Nouvelle. So Nouvelle without the end basically runs like Nouvelle, Dauntless, and Dragonic Overlord, the original one. So your main play is like you go into the Nouvelle over the Dauntless to basically get the break ride. You also have the Dauntless engine to be like popping stuff, searching your break rides, and also like finding you the Overlord to just counterblast 3 and just wipe out the front row and then just go in for a billion attacks, knowing for the fact that they cannot get defensive power due to Nouvelle. So usually go into that when you're at 5 yourself. The end variant is just the end with Dauntless in it, so it's also really, really good deck. Amon is like Amon, it plays with Reiji. I think without Reiji, like, you're better off just putting Reiji in it, but I think it's like the engine of Amon is really, really good, but it's the Reiji that makes it pop off, and then this is just a backup grade 3 for Reiji at this point. Otherwise, I think it's like high effort, less return. Lugia, I think, is definitely highly competitive. Don't think it's actually a best deck. It got a few tops, and it's been definitely topping a fair bit, and it's going to get even more support very soon. I think it's like on the edge. It's really, really close, but there's a lot of different builds. I think the pure one definitely doesn't feel like it's as good. I've seen like I've seen the Fortress build kind of like running around, and that one's also like really, really good, but it's pretty hard to pilot and therefore it requires a lot of effort. But I think this is like at the top of highly competitive. It's like just barely off of best decks in my opinion. I think this is high effort, less return. Definitely like Great Nature still feels good. Just nobody plays it, but I don't think that makes it bad. This has potential. I always will say Nobutama has potential, but still kind of in the struggle streak category. Then Mordred, of course, still one of the best decks. Raging Form, you know, great. It's just great cards overall, just great cards. This, it's still good. Nobody really plays it because there's much better Nova archetypes now, but I think that reverse ethics is still really good. Maybe it's high effort, less return because it's like you put in a lot of effort when you could be getting a lot more return out of the other Nova decks, and so that's just like unfortunate. And this, of course, is definitely a struggle. This is all non-chaos variants of Link Joker, so this is like Nebula Lord focus, also Schwarzschild we've been seeing here and there. I think this is high effort, less return because you could be getting a lot more. Maybe highly competitive, I would say, because you still get a lot out of it, but I think the Chaos variant is just way, way, way better. I think Chaos is indeed one of the best decks, but you know, I'll come back to this a bit later. This is kind of in struggle street. It just become worse over time as more Kagero archetypes get support and just blow it out of the water, which is really unfortunate. Not the Yatagarasu. Fortuna as a focus, high effort, less return. It's pretty okay, but it doesn't really feel like it's the best one. It's basically played as like a backup grade 3 in a lot of decks instead. I think Ripples are struggling. Revon is sort of like a backup, so it's kind of also just sort of there. I think it's on its own. Tachis are also sort of struggling. All right, getting to Chaos now. Why do I think this is still one of the best decks? I've been playing this deck a lot myself. For some reason, I was like playing a lot of these new decks and like testing them for deck and fights and stuff. But then when I was like climbing in my own free time, I just keep playing Chaos because I realized like everyone saw like, oh, Azel's coming out and like all these unlockers are coming out. Chaos is dead, hooray. Not really. Any other matchup, you're still dominating if you know how to play your cards right and how to control the tempo as Chaos is supposed to. And then the matchups where they have unlockers, you kind of switch your brain to go from like the usual Chaos playstyle of trying to like deny their resources, preserving your hand, like not going too hot ham in the early game, and just like controlling the tempo of the game basically is like the whole thing for Chaos and Zero. In those matchups like Azel, where they can actually unlock their board, you don't do that as much. Instead, you just put the helmet on, put the blindfold on, rush them, and then like just push them as much as possible, as early as possible. And then all you gotta do is, the only time you really lock is when they're at like 4 or 5. You just lock the interceptors so that they can't intercept, and then you just like swing face 3 times to win. And even if they unlock next turn, you know, that was your attempt to win. And if they didn't kill you that turn, if you have the resources, just do it again, swing face 3 times. So I find that even the Azel matchup, like there's another caveat to it where not only can you just like switch playstyles, but also Azel is pretty counterblast heavy in that sense because it's counterblast 2 and it refunds itself, but you have to get to that counterblast 2 first. And so you can deny them, you can play around it. And especially if they're super greedy, because what typically people do is like they ride up to regular blonde Azel, self-damage themselves, like burn all their counterblasts to just superior call, and then they have like nothing left, or you don't give them the 1 extra counterblast they need for the Grand Azel Scissors. So I think Chaos honestly is one of the best decks. Personally, I think like the more I play, the more I'm impressed I am with it. I think it definitely, like, you have to completely play it differently. You don't play like any other deck in this game, in my opinion, but it's really, really good still. Even after nerfs, even after introducing unlockers, I think Chaos will stay good for a really long time. Like, it's hard to kill this deck. Jewel Knights, this is with Ashley Reverse, definitely a best deck. Like, this deck, it had got so much. Like, Miranda is an insane card. It lets you search for free, find you PGs, find you grade 2s, find you whatever you want, find you break grinds, literally whatever. Ashley Reverse gives you front row pop, gives you intercept search, gives you setup. Like, it's so damn nice. This deck got so many amazing tools, and it felt really strong in week 1. Everyone was playing it. It fell off later on, but I think now after the nerfs, it's gonna be coming back into the top because a lot, like, basically it's bad matchups. Reiji and Ashura are just gone. So it does have other bad matchups, but it's still just so strong. I think Jewel Knights are insanely strong after this set, and I think a lot of people would agree. This is high effort, less return. I think it's like not highly competitive, but it's pretty good. Like, if you put in the effort on Angels, you will be rewarded, in my opinion. OTT, this is not the Tsukuyomi variant. I think this is kind of like more in terms of struggle street. I think, again, so these aren't really in order. This is like literally just everything kind of in there. Just doesn't feel as rewarding as Tsukuyomi, which you could be playing instead, and it's still really highly competitive. I think in ranked it's just not really worth putting in the effort because of how just big brain you have to be. But every single CS so far, every single championship series, like for Zero, we've seen Tsukuyomi's always there. It's always there. You could say it's still a best deck. Like, you could say it's still a best deck, but I think it's like more towards the highly competitive. Like, I see like Lukier and Tsukuyomi kind of match. Like, they're both really good decks, but they're not like the best decks of the game, I would say. So at least not anymore. Let's just put it that way. So, and there's definitely like, we've seen Tsukuyomi brick, and it just like, or not even brick, but just like get unlucky at certain points, even when the setup is going right. So I think it's definitely like, maybe I've been blowing it up a bit too much lately. Prisms are, Bermuda's about to get really good support, so I'm gonna put it here for now, but it might shoot up to like best decks, honestly, with next set. We're gonna find out very soon, so sit tight for another month, I guess. Magatsu, this one's interesting. I have not been testing it, and I haven't really played against it, but Murakumo got the second clan event, which is why you see 2 Murakumo decks. I've been hearing really good things about Magatsu. I've been hearing that this deck got apparently really nice support, and apparently it's like super good. You still have to like put in a lot of effort to be good with it, but I've been hearing it's got potential, but people just aren't playing it. Like, I've never faced it. All I hear about is like some dudes that are just like trying it out and just like, yeah, this is really good, this is actually really strong, and stuff like that. But you know, I don't know if like how actually accurate that is because I haven't really tested against it myself. We're gonna find out over time, but keep your eyes on it. Spikes are, yeah, they're still good. Spikes are still good, I would say, kind of around here. Not like super highly competitive, but they're still like able to play really well. But you know, once we go to Legion, if that's the first clan event, get ready for the pain train. That's gonna hurt. Why is this deck still around, man? Why is MLB always around? I still run into MLB in ranked. I still lose to it in ranked sometimes. It feels like it's never gonna leave. It feels like MLB is around forever. It's definitely not a best deck, but it is highly competitive. It's still really good. You could be getting more out of Jewel Knights, but if you have your MLB, you don't feel like spending your gems. You're still good. You're still chilling with this goddamn deck. Azel here needs to go here because we have Grand Azel Scissors. I forgot to update the visuals, so let's jump to this. So we've seen different tier lists put this differently. I'll put it under highly competitive because I think it's quite good. I think it's not a best deck, but I think it's really good because you do have a nice matchup against the majority of Link Joker players, because a lot of people, they will just like lock stuff early, or they will just not know how to play against the deck because they're like, oh, you play Azel, I'll just concede next game, you know, which isn't actually a bad thing because you save time on your climb, which like, it is a bad matchup. No matter how you look at it, Azel is a bad matchup for Link Joker, but if you play it smart, you can beat it. Otherwise, Azel is still good. It has the play of like doing double Grand Azel Scissors to give itself +2 crit, so you can deny their limit break and kind of like roleplay Reiji basically. But aside from that, it has still the nice like Azel engine. It has a lot of good things going for itself. It feels like it's just lacking a little bit to kind of like be pushed over the edge, and we're seeing more and more like Azel Scissors just being played in Liberators instead of playing in its own deck, which I think, you know, is kind of like a natural trend as well. So I think it's really good, but it's not one of the best decks. I think that's something we need to be clear on. Great Nature here, again, kind of higher for less return, so both of these variants are definitely up here. This is just Maelstrom. Maelstrom on its own is kind of falling off for me. I feel like it's still decent, like it's still pretty like decent as in like competitive. You still run into it every now and again, but I feel like it's falling down and down and down over time. Like, it really lacks the tempo that a lot of these other new decks have. It's gonna get support, like it's gonna get reverse Maelstrom really soon with a lot of cool engine cards, but I think we'll push it back up there. But it feels like it's just a little bit too slow compared to every other deck right now. And like, the only Aquaforce deck that you could make a point for is like Tetra Drive, which I think still kind of sits here. It is pretty competitive. Again, it's a deck you don't really see very often, but I think it's like, you will run into it and it will just like blow you out of the water every now and again. So I think that like, for example, stuff like this is still like, Tetra Drive still feels like it comes up. But for Maelstrom, I think we'll have to wait for the next set and see if it actually improves. Eradicators have been falling off, but I think they're still one of the better decks. I think they're kind of falling off in terms of like their meta ability, because not only are they like not getting good cards, they keep getting new archetypes for Eradicators, but not supporting the actual base deck. And like their new tools aren't really that great. On top of that, there's now decks that just like either don't give them Limit Break, or there's goddamn Liberators that just straight up say like, you can't touch my board, by the way, because haha Garmor. So Liberators, my god, like Eradicators, some people would probably put it here. Some people would actually knock down Eradicators down to highly competitive, but I think it's still got a lot of potential. I think it's still really, really capable of doing great things. But Liberators, let me talk about Liberators for a second. Zenith is an incredible card. Ganslot Zenith literally is like the biggest support you could imagine in terms of like how hard it's pushed the deck. And basically like having this one card that not only acts as like an old Ganslot, which like if you call it, it goes back to that calls a Blaster Blade Liberator, but the actual ability of it as a boss unit to just give you 4 attacks and Liberators is insane, because then you can chain that into a Blaster Blade that retires something and then CCs, and then maybe into a Barco Liberator that calls something else. You can chain that into Josephus that calls you an extra card. It's like, it's so good, and the whole deck is just amazing. They got a Dorant, which means they countercharge now. They have so much superior call ability. Like, it's basically a faster Revengers, which is really weird to think about. Like, instead of having a restanding Vanguard, they have a restanding unit, so for the 4th attack with Zenith, but instead of having to retire their stuff and like be minusing themselves after plussing a lot, they don't. The thing is, like, they plus just about as much as Revengers, but they don't minus themselves with all the retiring. So it really feels like Zenith is one of the better decks right now. I don't know if it's better than Revengers because it doesn't have that like really powerful restanding Vanguard that Raging Form is, but it's still really, really good. Like, Zenith definitely has pushed Liberators like even further beyond than I expected. All right, Dayusha. This is Dayusha. This isn't Reverse Dayusha. This is the Dayusha variant. This was in the Zero Championships day 1, and I was impressed. I tried this deck out. This is called Turbo Dayusha, which runs basically like, it runs Goyusha, it runs like Kaizard. So what you do is you ride Kaizard, you use Goyusha to go into the old Dayusha. Kaizard gives it 5k, you have a crit already while your opponent's on grade 1, you swing at them 2 times, put them on 4 when they ride grade 2 or something, and then, or even ride grade 3 for that matter, like it doesn't really matter. You push them to 4, next turn if they don't give you limit breaks, stay on that Dayusha, just power up naturally, go in with a crit for the pressure. If they give you 4 damage, you go into great Dayusha, you pressure. It's just like a rush deck basically, like it just like tries to hit them with crits as fast as possible while not running any crits but just using Dayusha. This has been really, really good. This has genuinely been really amazing. I think Daikaiser, unfortunately, you know, the Daikaiser Great Dayusha build that like denies limit break, it just feels like a worse Reiji without all the amazing resourcefulness that Reiji has. And as much as I love my man, I'm waiting for that support next set, because right now Dayusha variant is just way better. Like, I'm being completely honest, the Dayusha variant is just way, way, way better, and like playing for the break ride just hasn't felt as good, and it's quite unfortunate because it felt much better last month, but you know, that's just how the meta has evolved. Ramil Reverse, I think, is, yeah, high effort, less return. You guys have seen this deck. Like, it's not great, it's not fun, it's not enjoyable at all, but it's okay. That's about it. It's not like struggling, that's the thing. It's not struggling in my opinion. I think it's decent, but maybe it's at the top of struggle street. Blouse are actually really highly competitive, even though, you know, the boogeyman over here that's just literally has a category for himself for this month exists. Blouse on their own are still really, really good. Like, Blouse just have a really amazing engine. They have a lot of surgeability, countercharging, you know, amazing break ride, amazing main grade 3, just everything going for them, to be honest. And so some people would maybe even put it here. I think it's at the top of highly competitive because maybe if like some decks just like manage to choke it out pretty well, or it's also the fact that a lot of decks just like deny it. Like, they just kind of deny it. For as long as Reiji's around, this is like the deck to deny as well. Like, a lot of these decks, they look at Reiji and it's like, yeah, you kill my limit break, but I can still do stuff. Like, Jewel Knights can just like push themselves to limit break and still start pushing, you know, with extra crits or whatever. Kagero literally doesn't care. It's just like, alright, I'm just gonna ride the end on the Striken and just like push you to 5 and then you're gonna die next turn. Gancelot, like, it pluses so much naturally before it even break rides, it doesn't really care. Revengers, hello, nice to meet you, here's my Tartar, here's my Doran, Vlad's Dark Avenger, go ahead. You know? Chaos can kind of play around Reiji as well by just like carefully locking their stuff, but it's definitely a really hard matchup. And then this also struggles against Reiji, so it's like barely here, but a lot of these decks, they're the ones kind of like struggling more against Reiji. Not these decks that don't care about limit break, but you know, a lot of them really, really do. This I thought would be better last month when it first released, it does not feel that good. I don't know, it doesn't really come up that much, and when it does, it doesn't really feel like it does much. I don't think it's struggling just yet, but it's definitely on the lower spectrum of high effort, less return. This apparently is pretty decent. I've been running into it every now and again. It's not as good as regular Eradicators in my opinion. Oh man, I might demote Eradicators, man. It's actually, it feels like it's been struggling properly lately. Like, I don't know, it's really barely there. It's barely there, and it's a shame because it's never getting, like, Eradicators are basically never getting proper support again. Like, until G, they get like whatever support, and it's gonna fall. It's gonna fall eventually, and we're just kind of waiting for that. But where were we? We're talking about the ignition, like the samurai build. It's decent, it's okay. I don't think it's that great compared to the regular Eradicators, but it's pretty okay, honestly. Dauntless Reverse is actually pretty good. Surprisingly, Dauntless Reverse is good. Who would have thought that, you know, like, you can basically just go into, like, cross break ride, use the skill to then give yourself the back row wipe, go into an old overlord, and just, like, front row wipe, back row wipe. They don't have resources. Like, they just run out of resources, and, like, it's hard to fight against this deck because it always chips away at your field. Whatever you put in the back row, it's gonna start popping it, and it's just really, really difficult to properly play against. Then, Sanctuary of Light, best deck, baby. I would put it here. Honestly, I'm being completely honest, this deck surprised me. Like, the Zero Championship, I was really thinking this deck is a meme. This dude took it as a joke and, like, you know, he's just kind of like flexing. But I've been playing with it more and more and more. It's really not too bad. Like, you get superior calls every turn, you get free intercepts all the time, you have, like, Ganslaw, Blaster Blade to be popping stuff. It doesn't do much, but it's honest work, you know? It's really... It does what it needs to do, and that's enough. Like, it honestly does a great job, and I'm surprised. It's such a budget deck too. Like, honestly, if you're on a budget playing Zero and you have some Gan slots, like, just wait to craft some double rares and you'll be good. Like, yeah, I'm really surprised by this deck. It's genuinely pretty good, like, in my opinion. I'm being very honest here. Minerva, milady, she's definitely very good. She's highly competitive. Has quite a few glaring issues. Some people run the, like, Limit Break, you know, like the self-damager build to kind of, like, go into her Limit Break as fast as possible and start pressuring people with the extra crit that because you run a lot of crits in this deck usually. Other people, like myself included, kind of play with, like, more of, like, a Soul Blast stuff out, activate effect, kind of like typical Genesis build, which is also still really good, but I think it's kind of lacking. It also needs the Limit Break to kind of pop off, and overall it's like, it's got a few glaring issues, but the ceiling of the deck, like, the floor is pretty low, but the ceiling is really high in my opinion, because the ceiling is essentially defined by, oh, you can go Minerva into, like, double chamomile, and then, like, you got the retire card, you got a lot of different intricacies, but they all have to wait for the Limit Break turn. Until you can actually do Minerva's skill, you're not really doing much. That's the only sad part. And, like, Cider is a really nice card as well, but apart from that, it's like, it has a high ceiling, but the floor just feels a bit too low, but it's still really good. It's still really, really good as a deck in my opinion. All right, Heaven or Hell, let's rock. Like, I'm sure everyone knows, you saw the video yesterday, like, this deck is a problem, and it got its legs chopped off completely, like, clean off. This deck is honestly, maybe, you know, this is kind of a meme putting it here, but this just goes to show, like, when cards aren't properly play tested, and this was too much. This was generally too much. This deck is very dominating. You can play against it by not giving a Limit Break and just keeping it at 3, but the problem is that makes a really unfun, like, state of the game where everyone's just, like, passing on 3, pass on 3, pass on 3, pass on 3, don't give each other break ride. It really sucks and nobody really enjoys it, and that's kind of like the bad part with this. It's just like, this deck should not be as powerful as it is. I do think maybe the nerfs were a little bit too heavy because now it feels barely playable after the nerfs. Well, we haven't gotten them yet, but that's what they're going to feel like, I think. But, you know, this is by far the best deck. Like, it's actually crazy. It's also a shame because any other deck, like, sure, it'll blow up your opponent if they don't know what they're doing against it, but this especially, like, if they just give you Limit Break thinking you're a Blau deck, you're gone. You're actually just destroyed. Hyakya played against a couple times. Honestly, I guess it goes around here somewhere. It honestly feels a little bit like a struggle to me. Feels like a more of a fun deck, but I'll put it towards the lower end of high effort, less return. I think you can still get something out of it, but I feel like actual Magatsu gives you a bit more, personally speaking. So this is what the meta currently looks like to me. I think I generally stand by most of these points for the most part. After the nerfs, I think Reiji falls down to, like, here-ish. I think it's still going to be really, really good. So after the nerfs, I think Reiji falls down here, and this falls down to, like, here. Maybe here. Maybe high effort, less return. But as things stand right now, until things change, this is what it looks like to me. So the best decks isn't like super well ordered. I think these, like, they have different matchups against each other, so it's hard to like say like, oh, this one's better than that, this one's better than that. Like, they're all just amazing decks. If you have any of these and you go to ranked, I think you're literally having a field day, and, you know, including this, of course. And then if you have any of these, you can easily take them to ranked and have fun. Like, I've been climbing with these decks, or this, but I've climbed with this and had some success. This I've played against a lot and had seen people have success. This I play against all the goddamn time. This I've played it a lot and actually climbed a good chunk. This you can definitely climb with. You know, all these decks are really, really good. This stuff, of course, is usual. Like, if you really like these decks, if you really like these clans, if you put in effort, you learn the matchups, and you learn how to actually, like, pilot the decks, like, really efficiently, you'll be good. I think you'll be good. Like, all of these reward skillful play and, like, mastery of the deck, and I think if you really like any of these, you'll be good. Here, even if you do, I think you're struggling a little bit. Maybe some of them a little bit less, but I think you, like, the deck doesn't really, like, give you enough power to really persevere. I think maybe Battle Sisters kind of can go here, but that's about it. Like, maybe this is like at the very bottom, but you see it so rarely these days that it's just like, it's pretty unfortunate. But yeah, so that's the tier list. That's basically it. Wow, this was a really long one, actually. I had a lot to say this time around because I've been playing quite a lot this set, and next I'll be playing a lot too because for some reason something has possessed me, and I'm going to try to get top 100 on the Blue Gear season. And speaking of next set, if you want to watch me open 300 plus packs for the upcoming set, which has the Prism duos, it also has great Daikaiser as well as, of course, Venus Lukier, come to my Twitch. I'm going to be opening 300 packs on Monday morning, probably around like 9:30 a.m. CET, so that's Central European time. So come through, come check it out, and I'll see you guys there. But anyway, that's going to be it for me today. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.